Dean Ambrose didn't just walk through the crowd at Double or Nothing 2019 to make a statement. He detonated a cultural bomb that altered the trajectory of All Elite Wrestling and forced the wrestling world to recalibrate its entire compass. From the moment Jon Moxley, no longer a shackled product of sports entertainment, hit the ring and laid waste to both Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, he symbolized something greater than a surprise debut. He was validation. He was rebellion. He was proof that AEW wasn't just a t-shirt company with indie dreams. It was a battleground for the disillusioned, the hardened, and the unapologetically authentic. And Moxley, born again through barbed wire and fury, became AEW's soul, their storm. In a company built on the idea of freedom, no one embodied that ethos more violently and honestly than Moxley. His arrival gave AEW its first undeniable moment. Prior to that, AEW had momentum, star power, and promise, but Moxley gave them edge. He gave them danger. He gave them a face not crafted in a corporate boardroom or programmed for mass appeal. What Moxley delivered was raw storytelling. It wasn't about catchphrases or canned promos. It was about unpredictability, grit, and emotion. He cut through the fluff. No one cared about his wins and losses as much as they cared about his intent. And that intent was simple: wreck everything that smelled of comfort or complacency. He didn't come to AEW to play wrestler. He came to fight, to bleed, to make pain poetry again. His first feud with Kenny Omega didn't just deliver a match, it brought AEW's willingness to walk into the darkness with it. The unsanctioned match at Full Gear was a brutal departure from anything that had been shown on mainstream wrestling television for over a decade. There was no slickness, no polish, just pain and storytelling through scars. Moxley turned the arena into a war zone, using beds of barbed wire, shattered glass, and mouse traps to tear away the fourth wall between theater and survival. For some, it was too much. For AEW, it was perfect. He turned controversy into currency and drew a line in the sand that dared fans to choose sides. AEW wasn't WWE light. It was something else entirely, and Moxley was the violent prophet leading that charge. But his influence extended beyond bloodshed. When he ascended to the AEW World Championship in early 2020, he gave the title its first real sense of weight. Chris Jericho had been the ideal inaugural champion, charismatic, established, and strategic, but Moxley made it feel earned. He was the first AEW World Champion who wasn't a legacy name defending a past career. He was defending the present, and in doing so, he became the blueprint for what an AEW main eventer looked like: flawed, fearless, and fan first. When the world shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Moxley didn't just hold the company together, he was the company. Empty arena matches became a showcase of his ability to tell stories with nothing but a camera and a sense of purpose. His promos weren't performances, they were confessions. There was no crowd to react, no roar to play off of, just Moxley staring into the void, making sure that every word he said cut like a switchblade. He carried the championship through the most uncertain year in modern wrestling history, never once losing his intensity or the belief that AEW wasn't just surviving, but defining itself. He wrestled like every match was a brawl in a parking lot and talked like every promo was the last one he'd ever give. And then he lost the title to Kenny Omega in a way that foreshadowed what AEW would become: chaotic, layered, and unpredictable. That loss didn't diminish Moxley, it multiplied him. It gave him cause. When Omega aligned with Don Callis and began his reign of egomaniacal terror, Moxley became the revolution once again. His partnership with Eddie Kingston created one of the most emotionally grounded duos in AEW history. These weren't just two angry guys beating people up, they were brothers bonded by broken dreams and cigarette ash. Their promos were Shakespearean in their vulnerability. They weren't chasing belts, they were chasing redemption, and that made them dangerous. But perhaps Moxley's most impactful contribution was his complete refusal to be anything other than himself. In a wrestling world obsessed with branding, hashtags, and clean finishes, Moxley kept it messy. He was never about being the guy with the most screen time or the flashiest gear. He was the guy who walked in through the side door, fists clenched, eyes wild, ready to turn every match into a fight you couldn't look away from. And when he wasn't in the spotlight, AEW felt it. The rhythm shifted, the edge dulled. Because for all the super kicks and flips, Moxley was the heartbeat that made AEW real. His return after a rehab stint for alcohol addiction wasn't just a comeback, it was a manifesto. He walked back into the ring, thinner, clearer, and more dangerous than ever. He grabbed the mic, told anyone who doubted him to go to hell, and reminded the wrestling world that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was power. AEW gave him the space to speak his truth, and in doing so, gave countless fans permission to confront theirs. It was bigger than wrestling. It was about being human, messy, and all. That stretch where he carried the company during the chaos of CM Punk's backstage fallout and injury in 2022 was perhaps his most unheralded contribution. In a time where AEW was dangerously close to imploding under the weight of its own hype, Moxley was the glue. He stepped into the interim champion role without ego, delivered match after match without complaint, and never once let the audience feel the panic behind the scenes. He didn't ask for praise, he didn't tweet, he just fought, because that's what leaders do. They show up when the house is on fire fire and walk through the smoke like it's a warm breeze. And in those wars with Bryan Danielson, Wheeler Yuta, and CM Punk, he proved that AEW wasn't just a haven for great wrestlers, it was a place where legacies could be redefined. He didn't coast on his WWE resume. He went into the mud every week and found new ways to hurt, to heal, and to headline. He made stars by bleeding with them. He made fans believe that anything could happen, not because of gimmicks, but because of his presence. When Moxley was around, reality bent. The formation of the Blackpool Combat Club wasn't just another faction, it was a statement of philosophy. He and William Regal, alongside Danielson and eventually Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli, created something that felt ancient and violent and pure. The group wasn't based on friendship, it was based on respect, violence, and merit. It echoed catch wrestling roots, dojo wars, and pub brawls. And Moxley was its cracked-toothed general. When Yuta bled in front of him and earned his handshake, it wasn't just storytelling, it was baptism. AEW became more than a promotion, it became a proving ground, and Moxley was the gatekeeper. He normalized violence in a way that wasn't gratuitous but symbolic. He reminded people that wrestling at its core is supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to blur the lines between theater and truth. It's not about making everyone happy, it's about making everyone feel. And Moxley made you feel everything: joy, terror, empathy, disgust, hope. Even when the audience expected blood, he found new ways to deliver it, not just through weapons, but through stakes. Every match felt urgent because Moxley didn't wrestle like he was building to something. He wrestled like he had nothing left to prove and everything left to give. He turned weekly television into war zones and PPV matches into therapy sessions with fists and steel. His rivalries with Hangman Page, Orange Cassidy, and Swerve Strickland weren't about titles. They were about territory. Moxley wanted to prove that AEW's soul wasn't for sale, and he did it by walking into every match like it was a street fight that had been simmering for decades. He stripped away the artificial layers. He wasn't trying to win the crowd, he was trying to outlast the world. And in doing so, he gave AEW a blueprint for sustainability. While others chased moments, Moxley chased authenticity. While others protected their brand, he exposed his scars. While others needed catchphrases, he only needed a death stare and a microphone. And every time AEW stumbled, whether through backstage drama, injuries, or media scrutiny, it was Moxley who steadied the ship, quietly, brutally, relentlessly. He made bleeding cool again, but more importantly, he made effort cool again. He made showing up, throwing down, and never backing off the cornerstones of a company still figuring itself out. He wasn't there for politics, he was there for war, and that war made AEW feel alive in a way no marketing campaign ever could. The legacy he's built within AEW isn't measured in title reigns or 5-star matches, it's measured in influence. Every young wrestler who walks through the curtain with nothing but a chip on their shoulder and tape on their fists owes something to Moxley. Every segment that leans into the uncomfortable, every promo that feels more like a confession than a performance, every fan that chooses AEW because it feels real, that's his fingerprint. He didn't just change AEW, he anchored it. He defined its voice, not by volume but by integrity. He proved that a wrestler can have a past and still be the future. He proved that you don't need a perfect smile or a social media strategy to be the face of a company, you just need conviction. And long after he's done, AEW will still carry that chip on its shoulder, that bruised knuckle swagger, that refusal to play safe. Because Moxley didn't just shape the product, he embedded himself in its DNA. Every drop of blood, every stiff elbow, every grimace and unscripted moment, those were bricks in AEW's foundation. If AEW was a revolution, Moxley was its riot, and the echoes of that riot will ring forever.